In the boundaries literature, they talk about two types of couples: boundaries loving spouses, which is where both people in both spouses understand what boundaries are, and they're able to set them for themselves. And if any kind of issue arises, to where, say, let's say. Let's just use the property line example.
Okay. Sure.
Your neighbor crosses over onto your property and decides to plant a row of trees.
Good.
Now you can say to that neighbor, if the trees are not removed by such and such a date, I will remove them and come to you with the bill. That's an appropriate way to resolve that. And let's assume that he understands the concept of boundaries and says, "Oh, I'm absolutely sorry that I did that. I didn't realize that was the problem. Don't worry about removing them. I'll call somebody to have them removed myself at my cost." So both of you understand the concept of boundaries, and the problem is resolved.
It really comes down to respect as well.
Right.
So there are people who don't respect other people's boundaries. Sometimes you can't really tell what those boundary lines are, right? So what kinds of behaviors will he and won't he accept, and what kinds of behaviors will I and won't I accept? When you have a clear sense of boundaries and you love people with, you're boundary-loving people, then you have a greater sense of respect, and you can recognize those boundaries so they don't even get crossed to begin with.
Boundary-loving people.
Right.
I like that. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, but when you're not boundary-loving people, that can lead to codependence. And codependence means that you just have no sense of boundaries. You don't respect other people. You don't even respect yourself. So a lot of it comes from within your own self first. You respect yourself, and you say, I'm going to be with healthy people. I'm going to be with boundary-loving people. And you start to attract those things for yourself.
It starts with you, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But to get to people to that point, it's like moving a mountain sometimes, isn't it?
Well, it can be. But the boundaries concepts are really pretty simple. They're pretty basic, and I think once people really understand what the concepts are all about, there really is kind of this aha type of moment, and
it can kind of be summed up too into basically one little thing: treat others the way you want to be treated.
There you go.
And didn't Jesus teach us that? And so when we treat other people the way that we want to be treated, and we treat other people respectfully by respecting the boundaries that we put, not only by honoring where they begin and we end, kind of thing.
Yeah.
When we have that kind of sense, we can teach other people how to treat us. And so when we teach them how to treat us,
Become your own example, is that?
we are, exactly. We're saying, here's how I want you to treat me. When we treat people respectfully and we recognize that they have boundaries, or that they are their own person, then we're more able to teach them how to respect us.
So what keeps people away from building healthy boundaries? Is it fear? Is it intimidation? Is it they don't care, ignorance, or apathy? What do you think? What's your opinion?
I think that there's a lot of different things. People just don't know how to do relationships anymore, and people just don't get what healthy relationships are. They're stuck, or lack of respect. There's a lot of different reasons, I think.
yeah, I think some of it has to do with willingness to change. A lot of families today, we have things modeled to us by our parents that were modeled to them by our grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents. Yeah. So we just kind of follow the family line and the things that were shown to us. And some husbands and wives really get stuck in this type of this is the way marriage and
always been.
relationships are supposed to be, and I'm not going to change. And, Christians, they can, use the Bible to justify, well, this is what it says, and this is the way things are, and, why should I change because we're completely happy? And as coaches, that's perfectly fine. If that's their worldview and they're happy, then they're happy. But if one spouse might come to us and say, there are some things that are going on, and I really want to examine some of the values that we have in our marriage and learn to establish some boundaries, then we may, haven't met the other spouse yet. We may or may not be in a situation where some of the boundaries concepts might be a little bit harder to work into the marriage picture.
Sure, because don't you have to be ready to do this stuff?
You really have to be ready, and we actually have
be motivated.
assessments that we use that kind of assess readiness for change. And when people are ready, then they're ready and they're going to do the work. If they'll invest in it, and I'm not just talking financially, but they're going to invest themselves into changing. And that's
isn't it sad that when we get to the point where we're going to lose almost everything, then we start paying attention?
I think a lot of the time people have to hit the bottom.
Yeah.
Or they have to be.
Yeah.
There has to be some sort of a threat or perceived threat in order to reach the point of, wow, okay, so now I need to be motivated to change. I think that there is a way to find a motivation to change. That's, as coaches, that's kind of beyond our scope. That's not really what we do. But I think that if people can examine themselves ahead of time and figure out what is my motivation to change, that actually does help them, because then they'll realize there's the end result. That's why I'm doing this.
Yes.
That's why I need to change, and there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
And then they'll have a greater benefit from, like, they see the benefit of change.